What's going on, guys? This is Joseph Sadiq back with another video. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Today's topic is a very personal one. It's one that is to do with my lineage, the continent I'm from. It's never always nice to see the continent you're from in a bad light, and it seems like all my life is all I've ever seen. The negative depiction of the continent that I'm from, or my ancestors are from. Obviously, I was born in England, but taken back to Nigeria when I was a very young kid. I spent all my formative years in Nigeria until I came back into the UK when I was 18, or going on to 18. I've been in England ever since, but my entry into this plane is in England, is in London, born in London. But my soul, my heart, everything I am, my hue, it's African, it's Black African. So the topic of discussion today for me is it time for Africa to have its own nuclear weapon? Is it time for Africa to have its own nuke? I am not saying this as a way to say, yeah, let's blow up the world and, create havoc and crazy. Obviously, there has to be disciplined people to be around the nuke itself and all of that. But is it time for Africa to have its own nuclear weapon? The reason I say this is because nothing is getting done in regards to conversation with the West. Nothing. It's almost like they're begging at this point. No, let's not forget the historical context of what the West has done to Africa in terms of like the destruction, slavery, colonialism, neo-colonialism, which is even much more effective in terms of taking all its resources, printing African money in a different country, in a Western country. The interest rates the IMF gives Africa, it's diabolical, it's destructive. It's almost like, they always say it's not about being black and white, it's not about racism, but you give the rest of the world a lower interest, and you give Africa a sick demeaning. Even a school child can see and say this is modern day slavery. In terms of like, it's almost impossible for those countries to pay back those loans. The pillaging of its resources, and it's insistent on not having any development in all of those African countries to utilize all of those resources. Talk about palladium, cobalt, diamonds, oil, cocoa. All of them are taken into Western country and creating some of the products that the West consumes. I watched a conversation with a few African presidents, with the French president and a few other people, that own multinational companies in the West, in Africa. The conversation to me was one of like, please just let's do 50-50. Let's, don't give us too much interest. It's almost like they're begging them, without also understanding that France, in resources in the last couple of years, what they've gotten in resources is close to $500 billion, if not every year, because they're in control of the uranium and some of the other stuff that they got deals in. And some of the deals they've already planted and had deals that happened maybe 20 years ago with all of the interesting presidents that were like, yes boys to the West. So this also in my heart when I was watching that video, I mean I do appreciate Uganda and a few other countries standing up for their own values. Maybe they went, and also calling them out and saying, why are you going to sanction us and you're not sanctioning some other countries that even have worse laws than we do? I saw the conversation with the ANC leader, with the BBC Hard Talk, which obviously stood up to himself for the country in regards to Putin, and and also I saw conversations with the great president from Rwanda. I saw the South African president with their conversations. They've been diplomatic, they've been nice, even though they're getting fucked in the ass in every way possible. Sorry for my language, but there's no other way to look at this. They're getting banged from behind with no liquid, bro. It's there's no other way to talk about it. The only problem why the West is paying attention now, because I think, is the introduction of China into Africa. So listen to this analogy that I have when we talk about the West and China in Africa. Let's say Africa is a girlfriend, a woman, a girlfriend. The West is the bad boyfriend. The West is the boyfriend that beats you up, tells you to stay in the corner, abuses you mentally, physically, emotionally, in every way possible. And they've done that since 1650. They've done that since 1650. Right? Right even on to now. Instead of them killing your kids, with the West killed your kids, hung them, cut their hands, raped them, and tells you to stay in corners. Africa's had scars, but Africa didn't die. Right? She didn't die. The girlfriend didn't die. Somehow she survives. So China comes in now, not necessarily a better boyfriend, but is better. China looks at you and says, oh wow, look at your house. China brings new chairs, television, widescreen TV, gives you internet, gives you Wi-Fi, gives you a car to drive around, even decides to build the schools your kids are going to go in, how they transport themselves. And now the West is the bittered boyfriend trying to come back to you and say, oh, I'm better. How are you going to let it? He's not treating you well. Look at the way he called your name. Look, he shouldn't call you that name. He shouldn't call you Africa. He should call you African. Like he shouldn't call you. He shouldn't. Why would he buy you that dress? That dress is cheap. And then finally, the bitter and battered girlfriend is finally finding a way up and looking at West and saying, well, you've battered me for a very long time. I know you've said sorry, which is also nice, and you gave me $1 billion, like Germany did in Namibia. Like, what they've taken from Namibia is up to 50, all through the years could be close to 100 billion and even more. And they gave us singular billion and say, oh, sorry. I know you're saying sorry, but I want a renegotiation if we're gonna deal. I can have 2 boyfriends if I want. This is the battered woman talking. Because I'm the prize. I'm using modern woman terms for you guys right now to get understanding what's going on in Africa. So she's saying, Africa is saying to herself, it's like, I'm the prize, so I can have 2 boyfriends and I see which one to choose. But it's leaning more to China. So now the West is now kind of like, oh my God, we're losing. It's like the boyfriend. You know how the boyfriend that you abuse, it happened in relationships. The boyfriend that abuses you the most, the moments that boyfriend sees someone else treating you better, what do? They come back. The moment another woman comes to a guy's life and starts treating him better, the other girlfriend starts to hate. It happens. This is human nature. This is what's going on in Africa right now. So now the West is trying to come back, and so now Africa is saying to herself, I'm the prize, so let's renegotiate. But they're stringing Africa along. Africa is looking at the West and seeing the same behavior that they've always done, but trying to find a different way to do the same thing they've always done, which is just, yes, we do it, yes, we do it. The South African held the French president accountable about the loan, the money they were supposed to give, and they haven't given. You know, so now Africa is looking at itself saying, you know what, we need a renegotiation. Africa is begging. At one point, does the girlfriend get up and say, all right, enough is enough. You can just walk into my house anytime you want. I know you bought the house, but compared to what you've done to me, you've taken all of my resources, you've taken all of the best that I have, but somehow I survived. I have nourished you, I have given you the best sex, I have given you the best everything, but I still look good. I'm the prize, and now you want to come back. At what point does she say, okay, enough is enough, before you come into my house, I'm building gates around my house, I'm building security, cameras, I'm building barbed wire, I'm creating my own space. Before you come into my house, you have to press the bell at the gates, and I'll think about letting you in. At what point does Africa say that? At what point? This is my question. Because I'm not asking for a nuke for them to be like a tyrant and start destroying the world. No, we want peace in the world. But for negotiations, it's important to have that, because they're not going to stop doing what they're doing. They're just going to find a different way to do it. They've done that before, because you have to look at the colonial times. They stopped slavery, but they found a way to keep the African continent enslaved. They found a way to continue to take its resources to nourish itself. The African, it is the resources that built Europe. It really is. All of the foundation, all of the amazing things the West had built is based on African resources and its people. It doesn't compare to what they did in other countries. Its most valuable resource has always been Africa. It's as simple as that. You know what I mean? When they split Africa, there was no African country at the Berlin Conference. So at what point to Africa say enough is enough? We have our own nuke. This is how the negotiations is going to go. They're not going to give it up. So I don't understand how these African presidents are thinking that negotiations can work with the people that have a history of pillaging. And any president that stood up to them got killed. It's happened in Nigeria. It's happened in the Congo. You know, Patrice Obama. You know, the regular stuff. I'm loving. I don't want to say the presidents now. I'm seeing what they're doing. I'm seeing them standing up. I'm seeing them having, you know, and standing up for itself instead of being the battered girlfriends. Like, sit down and you sit down. Get up and you get up. No, they're finally saying no, thank you. We're not going to take that law from you. We're not going to take that law, but we want to continue doing business. But they're not the immediate and quicken solution is to have nuke. I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. Please leave your comments, you know, below, because I don't see any other ways. Because they've had this conversation, they haven't given the money. They want to build an electrical stuff over one of those rivers that's going to be able to power at least 30 countries in Africa through power. And they look into them instead of them saying, okay, enough is enough. You're not in control of our resources. You're not printing our currency from in Paris anymore. We're going to be printing our currency. We're going to have a singular currency. That will be a problem, because I think that's how my man got killed. Gaddafi, you know, because I think only Africa having a nuke will allow that to happen. That's my thought. I don't know what you guys think, because you've tried the peaceful way of doing it. The peaceful way, you're like, oh, let's negotiate. It's not working. They don't take you seriously. They think you're pricks. They've called us lesser humans. They created that with polygenism. It was their scientists that lied, even though that's not what God intended. They've taught themselves to think a way about us. They're not going to respect us until we have a nuke. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if there's any other way you can see Africans' liberation, Africans standing up for themselves without having a nuke. And I will listen. And I would even make a couple of other videos to reply or have a conversation about it. Or we can go on live, whatever. Do you know what I mean? I don't mind having conversation with people about this. But all I'm trying to explain to you is, how do we move forward without a nuke? How does Africa take its own control of its own resources that they don't control without a nuke? Because if Africa doesn't take control of its nuke, Africa won't have the resource, the money that comes from the resources to have the development that it needs for the future generations of African kids to enjoy. Because then it is not in their best interest for Africa to grow. It has never been in their best interest. It is in their best interest for this destruction of Africa to continue. They complain about the immigration and the people that are trying to cross over to the river, cross over coming in boats. But what they're not talking about is the resources they take from the countries of the people that are coming as immigrants are what makes their country great. So now they complain about it. The Italian president, prime minister, the lady, amazing lady, I've listened to her talk. He said, if you want a reduction in immigration, leave the Africans to their resources. They won't come here for nothing. But you can't keep taking their resources and making sure they don't develop their resources and develop things with their resources in their country that create jobs, and then on the flip side, complain that their population are trying to move over here. It doesn't work. But no one wants to speak about that. They try to silence the lady in every way possible. Mainstream media never speaks on shit like that. Let's not even forget the historical context, what you've done to the black race. Do you know what I mean? We've not even gone there. Okay, you've done it. You can say, oh yeah, it's slavery, or it's a long time ago. But what about neo-colonialism? What about that? I don't know. I know nuke is a very controversial subject, but I have to have this conversation because these very highly intelligent new presidents that are coming there, standing up and doing more for the people. I'm not talking, that's excluding Nigeria, by the way. I have no time for the, yeah, those are yes boys for England and the rest of the other Western countries. Those are, you know, I'm talking about people like the Rwanda, Kenya, the East African and some of the Southern African countries that are actually doing for their people. You know what I mean? I think it's time for them to not be like, oh, we should have our own, you know, please give us the money. And no, a nuke will be like, okay, France, you've eaten from us enough, it's time to go. We control our resources now. IMF, oh, okay, that's fine. We don't need your loan. But China, you want uranium? We're getting 50% off of everything that you go take out of the country. I believe Botswana have done that with the beers. Even though I do think there's people in the comments that were like, why don't you take 100% of it? But I think if they're using the bears are now, they're the biggest diamond, you know, and they're taking a lot of Botswana, using a lot of Botswana's diamond. So Botswana as a government takes 50% of every diamond they find in terms of the sales and everything, which is a good move because prior to that they were getting 25%. Can you imagine? Your country owns the resources and you're getting 20%? Some resources they're taking from the Congo, I'm hearing they're getting 5 to 10%. 5 to 10%? No wonder that country is so wealthy and they can't have the money to build infrastructure for its own population. It literally is getting banged in the ass with no liquid. Like it's the only way to describe it. Even worse than that. Do you know what I mean? Because this negotiation is not. It's not. This pleading. This. It's not working. Africa, I believe, needs its own nuke, its own nuclear power. Not for destruction of other country, but it helps negotiation. It helps you come from a strong point. It helps you, you know, come from a part that I got a nuke, you got a nuke. Yo, you're not coming here to still take our stuff. You want our resources, we get 70% off the rip, 60% off the rip. Or we control it and then you buy it from us. And all the monies that come in, it's reinvested back into its people, creating jobs for its people, creating a future for its people so they don't have to cross over the river, cross over the ocean to go to a country that not only going to treat them terribly, they're going to have to face racism, they're going to have to face, all sort of infrastructural, systemic racism because the country is not structured and systemically built for someone that looks like them. You understand? It's so important. I don't know if you guys, I don't know what you guys think, but it's the only way forward, man. Because these motherfuckers will never respect us until they do. And they will continue to, take over countries. They're gonna continue to kill president, cause a coup. There's nasty things that they've done all over Africa to the destruction of its people. They're gonna continue to use, it's the only way, man. Africa has to get its own nuke. If Africa can get its own nuclear power, then the negotiations can be better and the beneficial to the African continent, including China. I think China is doing all right in Africa. They're a lot better than the West, but I still don't trust them. What happens when they have full power? Will they go the same way that the West had gone? They're already doing better than they do, than they've ever done. They didn't want Africa to build nothing. Chinese companies are, for their resources, they've been able to come in exchange for research and build infrastructure, trains, and in different places, in different countries. And I think that's a way forward. This is what African presidents should have done. But also, if Africa was to get its own nuclear power, they need to make a law that any president that steals a singular currency goes to jail for like 100 years. Some shit like that, because that kills corruption at its roots. I think. Tell me what you think. A nuke is the way, man. A nuke is the way, unless we're gonna have generation of our kids growing up in Western spaces and in country that is not theirs. Because as long as Africa doesn't unify and grow, people will always have a need to go abroad to get a better life. Why don't we create a better life in Africa in itself? Let me know what you guys think. I know it's a very touchy subject when it comes to nuclear weapon. The world is a bit shook, but at the present moment, the West are not presenting anything decent. They still want us down. Chinese are a lot better, but there have been controversies in a lot of stuff they've done in Zambia and a few things, which is also sort of human behavior of how they viewed Africa, how the world, the leaders of the world taught the world, the West taught the world how to see black people, and obviously, a lot of other stuff that's happened. But I just can't, with all of the talk that's happening. I mean, Kenya is having to go to Iran as well to have the Iranian person and to ask for aid. That needs to stop. They need to take control of their resources. Aid wouldn't do it, man. It's too much. It's a continuation of the bullshit. Get nuclear power and take control of your shit, because there's no other way around it. Aid is not going to work, man. We're just digging a bigger hole for ourselves. You know what I mean? It's frustrating to watch. And now they're getting sanctions and all the rest of it. Shout out to the president. I know they're trying. I know they're working against a lot of historical contexts that is beyond anything that you could ever imagine. But is it time for Africa to have its nuclear weapon? My answer is I think yes. It's big time. But I want to know what you think. Subscribe, to this channel, press the like button. Let me know what you think. Let's have a conversation in the comments. Peace and love. Blessings. I've been Joseph Sadiq.